So I was interested in asking you about like creativity and the therapeutic space, like the clinical and the creative, and what kind of like creative approaches or activities you currently utilize or engage with or play with in your space with your clients. Do you use any at all? And how would you even term them?
Yeah, I use a little in that, I mean, when I work with someone, I always have a whiteboard next to me because I love to be able to share what I'm hearing on the board, so we do it together. It's a shared journey. And I have absolutely no artistic skills whatsoever when it comes to, especially when it comes to illustration. So I say to all my clients, please forgive my atrocious drawings because I always draw stick figures on my board.
Wow.
And it's just a way to highlight different aspects, but seeing it visually rather than me just sitting there with a clipboard and taking notes. I mean, the person sitting opposite me doesn't know what I'm writing down, and I want it to be able for both of us to see what is being created in that space, so that if I write something or if I draw a picture that doesn't quite resonate or sit with that person very well, then they can let me know. And they can let me tweak it so that it feels right for them, so that they are heard.
Yeah.
It's not me as an expert. Every single person is the expert on their own life.
Yeah.
And it's certainly the approach that we have here and that I have in that room. Is I don't know anything about what's going to make you feel better. You do. And it's just, I'm just there as a listener and a guide to kind of bring that out. That's all. And so in terms of the artistic activities, I mean, me and my trusty whiteboard are pretty much the go of it at the moment. And so I see that there is space to certainly use other tools and practices to be able to open up conversations in a completely different way.
Yeah, so why do you think it is? Why do you think, because there is a bit of a trend happening like around mental health and creativity, like the arts health space is an emerging space between these two fields, you know, and it's becoming a space in its own right. Like, so obviously there is power and use there. Why do you think that is? Like and perhaps to make it more specific, in your clinical space, in your rooms, when you take an idea, like your client shares a story or an experience or whatever it might be, some sort of sharing information in the space, then you interpret it and you create something visual from it, which to me sounds really cool. So a lot of people are visual learners, visual thinkers. When you see an image, you're like, got it, now it makes sense. You know, I can do something with it. What do you find happens? Like, why did you even start doing this? Because you must have started to do it and kept on doing it because it did something good.
Yes. Well, I think really sometimes words aren't enough, and I know that's how human beings communicate primarily is through language. That's how we try to understand each other. But in terms of humans, I mean, we get information from so many other different ways, from our senses as well, and it's utilizing everything, not just words. And so I've seen that when I just put really bad drawings on my whiteboard, I might be able to get something different as opposed to just me here saying back what I've heard. I'd say it back, but I say it back in imagery. And sometimes I will use words, but other times, you know, I might say, well, what I'm hearing is this, and I'd put something up on that whiteboard. And it's just a different way to open up those conversations because maybe, you know, my language isn't someone else's language. The words I use may not necessarily be the words that they use. And so it's that negotiation to try to understand. That's the biggest one. It's just trying to understand, to not put yourself in another person's shoes, but to really put yourself in a position where you're walking alongside that person so you can, as best as you can, see the world from their eyes. And the only way you can do that is really by listening and trying to understand, seeing what words they use, seeing what images resonate with them. And that is the way to be able to understand another human being.
So would you say that's empathy?
Empathy in a way, but also curiosity. Sometimes a lot of people don't quite know how to be empathetic sometimes with another person. And, you know, that's That's okay, but be curious. Be curious, because when we're curious, we're not judging, we're not analysing someone, we're just asking questions. And in asking questions, we then can come down to something that looks like understanding, that looks like empathy.
Sure.
It's when people don't quite understand each other, or when they feel like when there's misunderstanding, that conflict can arise, because you might not feel heard. The other person gets frustrated because they don't seem to be articulating what is happening for the other person, and then there's misunderstanding. When a misunderstanding happens, all sorts of stuff happens, and we see it across cultures, we see it across countries. So it's just trying to understand as best as we can, and when we don't quite understand, we just ask questions. That's all we do. We just ask questions, and we're interested, we're curious. And when we're curious and interested in another human being, you as that person receiving that interest and curiosity, you're just like, wow, someone's paying attention to me right now. Someone's seeing me for me, and they're interested. And I feel okay in responding to them, in responding to that curiosity, so that we can come to a shared understanding.
Yeah, cool. It sounds playful as well. Curiosity.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people lose it. I think a lot of people lose that sense of curiosity when they go out there in the world, and then they've already had these experiences before, so they have a level of expectation about when they meet someone or when they go into a new situation. They're just like, oh, I've seen this before, I've done it before, I'm not going to learn anything. And when you do that, you close yourself off to understanding something different, to observing something different, to learning something different. And so it's curiosity. If when empathy is too difficult or challenging for a person to engage with, then just be curious, because you don't need to do anything apart from just trying to understand through questions and listening to another person. So